The president will travel to New York City on September 22nd to address the United Nations General Assembly on Tuesday, September 23rd.
First of all, the drone and missile strikes that took place overnight in Ukraine. General Keith Kellogg, the president's special envoy, has described these attacks as egregious. Do you agree with that description, and do you view President Putin as an impediment to getting peace between these two countries?
Well, it's not about if I agree, it's about what the president thinks, and I know what the president thinks because I talked to him about this. He was not happy about this news, but he was also not surprised. These are two countries that have been at war for a very long time. Russia launched this attack on Kyiv, and likewise, Ukraine recently dealt a blow to Russia's oil refineries. They have taken out, as a matter of fact, 20% of Russia's oil refinery capacity over the course of their attacks throughout the month of August. So the president is continuing to watch this intently, and this killing, unfortunately, will continue as long as the war continues, which is why the president wants it to end. And that's why he's worked harder than anyone to end this war, which would have never started if he were president. But perhaps both sides of this war are not ready to end it themselves. The president wants it to end, but the leaders of these two countries need it to end and want it to end, must want it to end as well. And I think the president will make some additional statements on this later. As for Chicago and cracking down on crime, it is a priority of this administration to ensure that American cities are safe again. And I'm so glad that you brought up the crime in Chicago, because we've been seeing the governor of Illinois parading out there saying that there's nothing wrong with Chicago. It's a great place to live. There's no crime there. He doesn't need President Trump's help. Well, I think the residents of Chicago beg to differ, and the statistics beg to differ. And I'll just share a few of those statistics with all of you. For 13 consecutive years, Chicago has had the most murders of any U.S. city. This is J.B. Pritzker's legacy, by the way. For 7 consecutive years, Chicago has had the highest murder rate among U.S. cities with more than 1 million people. In 2024, just last year, Chicago's murder rate per capita was 3 times higher than Los Angeles and nearly 5 times higher than New York City. That's more than double the murder rate in Islamabad and nearly 15 times more than Delhi. Out of Chicago's 147,899 reported crimes this year, that's how many crimes have been reported in Chicago since January 1st. There have only been arrests in 16% of them. These numbers are unacceptable. There have been more illegal guns recovered in Chicago than in New York City and Los Angeles combined. The number of reported motor vehicle thefts last year was more than double the number in 2021. And Chicago has also, just like DC, come under scrutiny over discrepancies in its homicide data reporting. So as bad as these numbers are, perhaps they are even worse. And this is Governor Pritzker's legacy. He should put politics aside. He should pick up the phone and call this president, who would be more than happy to do right by law-abiding American residents in the city of Chicago, and we hope that he will. President Trump continues to deliver on his promise to restore law and order to our nation's capital. Since President Trump's intervention, there have been more than 1,283 arrests right here in the District of Columbia. Total crime in D.C. is down 19%, and violent crime is down 30%. Carjackings in the district are down 67%. Homicides are down 57%. Robberies are down 40%. Motor vehicle thefts are down 32%. And assaults with dangerous weapons are down 23%. And property crime is down 18%. These numbers prove the president's bold actions to make D.C. safe and beautiful again are working, just like he said they would. And that's why on Monday, the president took additional action to sign an executive order taking steps to ensure that cashless bail in Washington, D.C. is eliminated. For too long, D.C.'s reckless cashless bail policies have allowed dangerous criminals to be quickly released, which endangers everyone who lives in and visits our wonderful capital. No cash bail has also foolishly forced law enforcement to repeatedly arrest the same offenders over and over again, only for them to be released back into our nation's capital. This is the definition of insanity, and the president is seeking to end it. He also signed a separate executive order addressing the crime emergency in D.C. by instructing the National Park Service to hire additional United States Park Police officers to support public safety, and directing the U.S. Attorney's Office for D.C. to hire additional prosecutors to focus solely on violent and property crimes. So while liberal Democrats across the country continue to double down on their failed soft on crime approach, the American people, including local D.C. leadership, business owners, and residents, are rallying behind President Trump's crime crackdown. According to new polling, 81% of Americans say crime is a major problem in large cities across the country. And a clear majority of Americans believe the president's actions are justified and necessary to reduce crime in these cities. Indu Bhatia, who runs a liquor store a half mile from the White House here just down the street, is one of those Americans who are grateful for President Trump's public safety push. Indu recently told the New York Post that her store was robbed so many times that they had to spend exorbitant sums of money on security, jeopardizing her family's financial future. But thanks to President Trump's strong action, Indu said, quote, "All of my employees, including me, we feel much safer, and even our customers feel really happy when they walk into our store." And just yesterday, Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser credited President Trump for surging federal law enforcement personnel and said neighborhoods, quote, "feel and are much safer." We thank Mayor Bowser for her cooperation and her willingness to help us make D.C. safe and beautiful. This entire effort has vindicated what President Trump and law and order advocates have been saying for years, and this is our message to Americans in Democrat-run cities nationwide. Decline is a choice. You don't have to live in constant fear of being robbed, raped, or murdered. Your leaders are lying to you, and they have been failing you for decades. The President Trump approach of upholding law and order by letting our brave men and women in blue actually do their jobs to aggressively fight crime works. In just a few weeks, President Trump has done more for D.C. residents than Democrats did in 50 years. And this can be replicated in other crime-ridden cities across the nation. As President Trump has said, all of these elected officials in charge have to do is pick up the phone and ask for the president and the federal government's help. President Trump doesn't care if they are a Republican or a Democrat leader. He wants Americans to be safe and for every law-abiding American citizen across the country to be able to thrive in their city and in their community. His briefing by addressing the horrific shooting that took place yesterday at the Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where a deranged shooter opened fire during morning mass, killing an innocent 8-year-old and 10-year-old. 14 other children and 3 adults were also injured during this horrible tragedy. This was the first morning mass of the school year for these beautiful, innocent children, and this sacred religious service was desecrated by an evil monster. We are all eternally grateful to the heroic law enforcement officers and first responders whose courage and swift response aided all of those impacted by this horrible tragedy. As Director Kash Patel confirmed yesterday, the FBI is currently investigating this shooting as an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime targeting Catholics. President Trump signed a proclamation yesterday following his call with the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, acknowledging the victims and their families and directing flags to be flown at half-mast. President Trump and the First Lady encouraged the entire nation to join all of us in praying for the victims and their families as they face unimaginable grief and loss.